Hello everyone, here is our lesson for aquatic science on August 26th. So first we're going to look at our notes, distribution of water in the water cycle. Then we're going to look at how to access a resource on Schoology and an assignment on Schoology. So our notes on the distribution of water. When we look at the surface area of our planet, if I were to have a globe, we would see that about 72% of the Earth is covered by water. That water, when we look at it by volume, can be split out first into salt water and fresh water. About 97% of the water on Earth is salt water, which is unusable to humans. We cannot drink salt water. That would cause dehydration, leaving 3% of it fresh water. The fresh water is the water that we can use and water crops with, we can drink. That fresh water can then be further split up. So if we look here in the picture, 97% of the water on Earth is salt water in this beaker. All the rest of the fresh water is going to be divided up. We can divide it up into frozen glaciers and icebergs and ice caps, where it's unusable. A smaller portion is unavailable to us. Perhaps it's just groundwater that is too deep for us to easily drill for, or perhaps it's what we would call brackish, a little bit salty, or polluted in some way. Leaving the final portion, the drinkable, usable water, which is here in this pipette, only about 1 millimeter's worth. All of the water on our planet does move from place to place in the water cycle. Just because it's salt water now does not mean it'll always stay salt water. Water in the oceans can and does evaporate. The oceans are the largest source of water for the water cycle. When water evaporates, it leaves the salts behind, and then it falls down as rain or precipitation, refilling lakes and reservoirs, which are some of our freshwater resources where we can get usable, drinkable water. And then some of that rain will soak into the ground and become part of aquifers that again give us our source of drinkable water. Some are shallow aquifers that we can reach, some are much deeper. And as we see here in this diagram, eventually it will all make its way back to the oceans as it travels downstream. Another way to look at how water is distributed is by looking at our 3 aquatic biomes. We have the freshwater biome, which includes lakes, rivers, and some aquifers. Very low salinity, that's why it's freshwater, it's drinkable. There is this sort of in-between area, as we can see with this little Venn diagram image up here, of brackish water. This includes things like estuaries or any area where rivers meet oceans. And then we have the salt water, or the oceans. Here, the salinity is usually much higher, around what's called 35 ppt. ppt stands for parts per thousand, and is a concept we will look at more closely later on in the year. But to visualize it, so the beaker I had in the first picture held 1,000 milliliters of liquids. If I were to put in 35 milliliters of salt and filled it up the rest of the way with water, now I would have a 35 part per thousand solution. And that's a way that we measure salinity. So, and here we have another way to look at the distributions of water. If I exit this and come back to our agenda, we've got 2 more things to look at. A resource that you're going to need to use for today's assignment. So if we come here to Schoology, let's look at our resources page first. And on our resources page, so instructional videos where you can find recordings of lecture like the one you're watching now, as well as links. We're going to use this first link here, Texas Aquatic Science. On this page, up at the top, I want to point out quickly the glossary available to you, available in both English and in Spanish. But we're going to go ahead and scroll down the page to the textbook chapters. Today you need chapter 1, Water is Life Open. Each chapter starts off with an introductory video and then a few questions. Today we are more concerned with is just the content of the chapter. This is going to help us if we go back to Schoology and back to our course. And get into Wednesday. You're going to need that chapter 1 to help you with our assignment for today. You click on the link. This is the teacher view at the moment. We can see, we can start your attempt. And then you have a matching assignment for today. The questions are all on the left side. Answers, you will just drag and drop wherever you think they may belong. All right, thank you for joining me today.